Well, Pastor Kirk, Dad, good to have you back on Talking Church today. Today's topic is MultiSite. And
we know that.
Both of you have been on. You've for sure been on the podcast before. Early on.
You don't remember your previous guest? It was an incredible
This is your office that we meet in.
I think it was on staff culture.
Yep.
Most listened to.
No, it's not true.
Fortunately, it's not true.
Anyone that you're on is most.
I don't even know what one is the most.
Harry's podcast get a lot of listens.
We make sure if there's ever.
He's so smart.
Well, he has a good social media.
If there's ever an episode that starts to outpace one of yours, we just delete it.
No. Pastor Rob's is number one. I promise. It's all.
I'm a dictator. No, perfect score. He got a 10.
Yeah. Perfect. The most listened to for sure.
Every time he bowls, he gets a 300.
The pins just fall over.
We'll talk about MultiSite today,
but we're also gonna have fun.
But, always. We have a lot of fun when the three of us are together. We were at a conference the other day, staying up late till like 1 a.m, chatting in the hotel lobby, right. And you guys were having dessert and ice cream. And 1:30 is what it was.
Cheesecake.
Yeah,
it was good.
Yeah, so that's when we're together, we have a lot of fun.
They did not have decaf coffee though.
We paid for it.
Yeah, it was a discount.
Yeah, well,
the next morning.
I woke up
tired.
I don't even know how to steer the ship on this one, but
we're gonna get there.
My goal in this is to talk about MultiSite, how we do MultiSite. Kirk, you oversee all of our campus pastors. Obviously, Dad leading the church, leading all the different initiatives that we do. But talking about MultiSite, how we do it, how we think about even early on from starting going MultiSite. A lot of churches are probably wondering, okay, what should I do if I want to go MultiSite? But I think there's a lot of churches that find themselves with, most of them, 2 or 3 campuses and trying to figure out how to operate and go to that next level. And for us, it's just launching our 9th campus, and we've learned a lot along the way. We've gone from 7, 8, 9, but always doing new things. So I guess I don't know where to start from here.
I got a thought.
Great.
That's what I do.
That's what you do. That's why you're the boss.
I want to talk to everybody who's thinking about checking out on this episode, because they're like, we're not MultiSite. We probably won't go MultiSite. Let me tell you, I think you're going to learn something from this. First of all, because I believe you can be MultiSite. Even the smallest church can be MultiSite.
Yep.
You say, seriously? Yeah, a church of 13 people, 12, 13 people, you can be MultiSite. How? You just go to another community and do another church, and you can be MultiSite. You should be a circuit rider preacher.
You don't need video to be MultiSite.
No, you just drive. Like, I talked to a guy the other day, he still drives, like in the day of technology, and he has bigger campuses, and he drives. He gets in his car and he goes like 85 miles an hour, which I don't recommend.
He said he gets tickets too.
I won't say his name, but and he drives 3 campuses, boom, 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 and preaches 3 different times live. And so my point is, why can't a rural church, even of 13, 20, 40 people, say, I'm going to do this one at 9:30, I'm going to do this one at 11, and I'm going to do this one at 1. You have 3 different congregations spaced about 30 to 40 minutes apart, and you could be MultiSite if you're a small church. So I want to tell you that. And then if it makes sense, be MultiSite. Like if you're a church that's growing and there's no more room in your church, if it makes sense, start another campus. Ask for the people in that community to join the new location and to reach their neighbors more effectively by being there. So don't tune out. There is a MultiSite option. You might not want to hear it, but there is. And then for those that are leaning into MultiSite, grab a hold of it.
What distance between campuses have we seen to be like the closest distance or first furthest where we would plant a campus? Because some of our campuses are pretty close to each other. What have we seen about that?
Yeah, some people that are MultiSite are multi-state, or they're hours away. All of our campuses in Minnesota so far are within, I think the closest would be 20 minutes. 15, 20 minutes.
Yep.
And then the farthest would be into our rural campus, probably 45 minutes. And so it's kind of like we talked about today in one of our meetings about perimeter. And so currently we're kind of like around the perimeter of the Twin Cities, having one urban campus downtown Minneapolis. So I don't know what is best, what has worked and what has not worked for us. I mean, we had Burnsville, which if you're listening to this and you don't know the context of Minnesota, that doesn't make sense to you, but it was like right between two of our larger locations, which then we closed down because it was just too close and it didn't make sense. So what makes sense for you when you think about where are we going to start campuses?
I mean, people ask me all the time, how close can they be and how far from your campuses? And I say north to south, hour and 15 minutes. All of our campuses are there. Now, with Maple Grove, now that's not the case. It's going to be maybe an hour and 25 minutes. So an hour and 25 minutes from north to south, and then from east to west is about an hour and 15 minutes. So within that zone, we have 9 locations. And it's just kind of fascinating to think about that they're in there. Now, I would say 20 minutes away, used to be that people used to say, a church that's alive is worth the drive, And
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was back when they tried to convince
Nice.
people to drive an hour, hour and a half. A church that's alive is worth the drive. You didn't have online. You know what I'm saying? Well, now it's like, no, I don't want to drive that far. And it's rivers and freeways divide into, and mountains, rivers, freeways, mountains, lakes, those type of things. Like, look at Seattle.
Yeah.
Seattle's a city that was built for multi-site because people live in their zone and they're like, I don't want to go over that mountain. I don't want to go over that lake. But every city usually has a river running through it because that's why it was founded there. And so rivers and freeways and mountains, those things.
Rivers and valleys.
River Valley. There you go. We're in the Minnesota
okay.
River Valley originally, but
Well, you encouraged. Sorry to interrupt. You encouraged, and maybe we would do it someday. But the campus that is a lake community, Minnetrista campus. You said why not start like a pop-up service in a community center on the other side of the lake. It's a larger lake, and the community that's on the other side of the lake is not driving right now, based on the data we see, driving around the lake to come to church or driving their jet skis across the lake to church. Yeah. So the same campus staff can run a service on a Sunday night when we don't have church service in a different community at a community center. Why not give it a try? We've actually thought about our Apple Valley team someday starting something maybe in Rochester on a Sunday night, rent out a venue, and those are just examples of things that have been thought about, prayed about. What's the right time? Are we going to do it? Are we not? But you don't even have to add a bunch of staff to go make something happen. You can run your current staff. I think, is it Life Church that says like their staff, one singular campus staff can run 7 or 8 services on a weekend, and we're not doing that. So there's more that could be done.
Yeah.
So even on the other side of the lake.
yeah, it's not as bad as like Jew and Samaritan, but it's like, no, we don't go that way. We don't go over that way. We don't go to that city.
Yeah.
I know people that are like, no, we don't go there because we're this city. And even like I was out east in New Jersey and they're like, no. Those people on that side of the freeway, we don't mix with those side. I'm like, really? Literally? Like the freeway? We were talking the other day about a neighborhood in Minneapolis.
Bryn Mawr.
And you said the economics of that one was so high and right across the railroad tracks, totally different world.
Yep. We were talking with an inner city pastor that is launching a church, and he's in a tougher to reach neighborhood. And he said the average household income, I think, was under $30,000.
Yeah.
In the neighborhood blocks away, separated by a train track, the ethnic demographic is different, and the household income was like $80,000. And so you're talking about within blocks of each other. And so he's actually trying to bridge that divide, saying like, let's figure out a way to unify across the train tracks. But yeah, people don't drive across train tracks apparently.
And people don't drive to church as far as they used to, and they love their community. And the beauty of multi-site is people love where they live. I didn't realize this until just you told me this the other day. You had just gone to one of our other campuses for the first time on a Sunday.
Yep.
And here you are over the campuses, and it was your first time there. And I'm thinking like everybody goes to all the campuses like I do. No, they're in their campus. Well, think about the people in the congregation. They're like, I don't want to drive to Apple Valley. I'm in Minnetrista. Just put something, have the men's night in Minnetrista, and I'll go to it. I don't care if there's 40 people here. I don't want to drive to Apple Valley.
Yeah.
And so multi-site works because it makes sense in the community, and the distance is big enough. I don't know if I put one right across the street, but I would put it at a distance that makes sense or a community line that makes sense. Like, we're these people, and that's who we are. We don't go.
Well, have
there.
you ever seen like Starbucks where they literally have them like
Across
right
the
across
street.
the street from each other, and
New
you're
York
like,
City.
what? That doesn't. Well, yeah, New York, but even in like suburbs, it's like, why does that make sense? Well,
Yeah.
they've discovered and figured out the reasons as to why that is. I actually think too, when you think about from a ministry standpoint, we've gotten to the idea, and I think this has passed partly due to just church attendance going down. But like you said, church that's alive is worth the drive. It's funny, but
We used to
bigger
say
is
that.
better. Bigger is better has kind of been a mantra for a while, and I think people are starting to challenge that. Not that I think we would say growth is better, but bigger isn't always necessarily better. When you think about like, we should have a 10,000 seat auditorium, or we should have a church that everyone drives 2 hours, which is funny. Some parts of the country say, oh, it's 15 miles. Other parts of the country use minutes. And so obviously Minnesota,
Right.
we use minutes to determine, don't have very bad traffic. But have you seen that to be true? When you think about people in the community, you said they love their community. The kids at school can invite their friends. Hey, come to youth group. It's in the community. Come to my church. It's in the community, versus even a community or two over. It's all that they love the church. I mean, I even saw that growing up for a campus. It was 15 minutes from where we lived. And people
Yes.
were like, really? Apple Valley?
If
Why would I
could-
go there?
If I could do it over, I probably would have bought our house in Apple Valley and not Lakeville. And maybe it was good for you to not be in the fishbowl of like all the kids from school that in church. But when you would say to me, yeah, our friends were 15 minutes away or 12 minutes away, they won't even come over to Apple Valley. People have a tendency to live in their traffic pattern. And one thing they do is they drive in, but not out. People from Lakeville, and if you don't know where that is, that's an outer ring suburb, will drive into Apple Valley or Egan, but Egan doesn't drive out to Lakeville. People in Lakeville will drive up to or into Edina and go shopping there, but people in Edina don't drive to Lakeville or Apple Valley. They're like, that's where the zoo is. It's the inward traffic pattern makes sense. The out doesn't. And people say, what campus should we go to? And I always say, what ones would your neighbors go to? Pick from those. Like if your neighbors would go to that one or that one, pick one of those two campuses and be a part of them. Don't be so far away.
And we do look at that. We look at who currently attends our church when we talk about new campuses to potentially start. Who currently attends our church that's driving beyond that normal 15 or 20 minutes. That's driving across the river or the highway. They're crossing the major highway or, in some context, the train tracks. And you've had conversations with those people that are like, I'm thinking about going to that new, where by the time this podcast is out, Maple Grove may have already been launched.
it will be.
And so we just launched brand new location, and there are people that are a part of that new campus that were praying about whether or not they should be a part of it. And the response from Pastor Rob is, well, which campus are your neighbors going to go to? Your next door neighbors. Like you've thought about inviting your neighbors to church, right? Like that's crossed your mind. Well, they're not going to drive 30 minutes just like you are just because you love the kids ministry there. Well, we're going to have a great kids ministry down the street from your neighborhood. And so, talking to pastors and churches that are thinking about, well, maybe we're going to go multi-site or we're going to add another campus. That language of where your neighbors are going to go, where would your neighbors go that are not yet saved?
We've talked a lot about the people in the communities, which I think is a huge part, maybe the most important part of deciding on multi-site. But when you think about the actual logistical realities of multi-site, that you're managing twice as many staff, twice as many people, twice as many wins, twice as many problems, as a pastor who is expanding, maybe they're in campus number 2, campus number 3, or they're in the process of launching, what are some things you guys have learned about leading teams through multi-site when, you're talking, you hadn't been to that campus before. We have staff that they aren't at a lot of times people call it the main campus for a while. That's
I like
main
the
campus.
original. That's
Sure.
a much better word than main.
Yeah, we use
'cause it makes the
broadcast
other
now.
ones feel secondary.
Yeah. But what are some things you've seen in how to manage people to where the culture, we did our podcast on staff culture, is still being communicated, staff meeting. Obviously for some, they can still come together. If they're 30 minutes away from each other, they can still come together and meet every week for staff. But what are some things that we've been able to stay connected as a team while we start ministering in different cities?
I think about this, that multi-site is it gets harder by multiplication. So it's like you have one campus and then you add a second one, it's 2 times as hard. And then you add a third one, it's now not 3 times as hard, it's 6 times as hard. You add a fourth campus, it's now 24 times as hard. You add a fifth, it's now, 96 times. It feels like that. And then as far as communication, now with more campuses, the ease of doing it, actually, it gets easier. It's like the economies of scale kick in. And so somebody that might have one other campus, you just have 2 campuses, you're like, this is really hard. You're living in the downside of it. If you get to 4 of them and you can handle it, you know what's going to happen. You have to think differently. So we've had to work way harder at communication. We've had to trust each other more. And I don't know. I don't know how many times people say, like, I didn't know that. You're like, it's okay. Get over it. We still love you. Like,
yeah.
You didn't know it, but we love you.
Yeah. No, I think at the campuses there are playbooks to run, and there's also freedom for them to operate in their giftings and their uniqueness. When you go to each one of our campuses, and when you say, like, I went to it was my first time going to weekend services. I've been in the building.
Yes.
I know the team and understand the dynamics of the campus and their staff. But still, when you go to other campuses, it's going to feel like River Valley. You're going to know it's River Valley by many, many, many things beyond just the sign on the outside of the building. But you're also going to sense the uniqueness of that campus pastor or that campus staff and even the congregation, the dynamics of city versus rural. I would say it's understanding the framework of how we operate centrally versus campuses, not central versus campus, but there's a different role when you're a central department head than you are as a campus youth pastor or campus worship pastor or even a campus pastor. The central roles, you are the playbook writers. We try to empower the playbook writers centrally to write a playbook for how the campuses should run that play. And we are working on the dynamic of making sure that campus voices are having an opportunity to give their input to the play, and the play is not the play forever, but it's constantly being there's iterations of the play. What's the next season look like? What are we doing in this next phase of church? And I think organizationally as well. Sometimes the dynamic is, well, we're adding a campus. We're doing this next thing. We're going from 6 locations to 9. What does the organization need to look like to be able to digest that? And I think. I think we are getting better at this actually, because now we're to the scale where there's always staffing stuff happening. There's always changes happening. And so instead of just getting ready, buckling up for the every 2 or 3 year major reorg, which still happens, we actually think more in iterations, like, well, for this next season we'll run here, for this next season we'll organize here, for this next season will you carry this? We're asking people, for this next season, can you operate in a dual role? And then it might swing back, hey, for the next season now you're going to be fully committed and focused to this. So basically what I'm saying is getting good with iterations of playbooks, understanding who writes the playbook, who executes the playbook, and also iterations of staffing and organization, so that it's not like people buckling up for, like, man, this place is never the same. It's like, no, we have to stay agile in how we run what is River Valley. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
it made me think of something that I remember I was talking with John Maxwell, and I was saying, it feels like we're reorging all the time, and we got to change things every couple of years. And he goes, are you growing? And I'm like, yeah, we're growing like crazy. He goes, well, that's good. He goes, every time you grow by 50 to 100%, you got to reorg. And I'm like, really? I felt good about it. Like, oh, okay, so we've got to do that. But I go back to, like, there's so much on MultiSite. I think about, what type of MultiSite are you going to be? Are you going to be command and control? It all comes from central, and you just want people to run the play. Are you going to be freelance, where it's shared vision, but owned expression, and every campus is different? Or is it going to be like our model is a hybrid?
Yeah.
It really is. It truly is half of the command and control and half of, individual expression. And our campus pastors.
It doesn't mean we suggest that either. I think
you got to do what works for you.
Who the leader is, because you look at, like, you kind of alluded, like, Life Church has a like their
command and
campuses.
control.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have like a C3 model that would be a little bit more independent.
Yep.
So it's
which almost operates more like a denomination.
Yeah. So it's really finding where you as a lead pastor are going to have your gifts, and really where other people can flourish well, because you have, like, that attitude of you want things a certain way, but not to the detriment of, like, staff feeling like you're like Like you very rarely are you like, this is exactly how things want to be. But on the other side, you want things to be excellent. So if something is amazing and you didn't know about it, you're like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But if something is horrible and you didn't know about it, it's like, that
It's
was a
still
risk.
horrible.
That was a risk that you took that you shouldn't have.
And we are a hybrid, truly, because people will ask, are you video venue multi-site? And we'll say, yeah, we are. Pastor Rob broadcasts to the house. And then the next question is, well, how often do your campus pastors preach? And then we'll say something like 10 times a year, like almost once a month. And they'll be like, whoa. Because they're coming from a video venue multi-site church where the campus pastors never preach, So we are in that hybrid space, I think. And for us, it works well. And I think that you love leading that way. It's trying to give maximum empowerment and trust to the locations and to the campus pastors, while also having a unified vision and lead voice to you. You are the lead pastor and lead communicator for our church.
What have been some breakthroughs in communication on multi-site in the way we communicate with campuses? And I'm kind of teeing you up a little bit for all staff, but we do all staff once a month with every one of our campuses. I think we've talked about it. I'm sure we've talked about it before on the podcast, but talk about the importance of that and even the cadence of that. If there's any communication tools that you've seen that have helped to make that work better, even how frequent you talk with campus pastors, Kirk, just some of the more practical sides of how we keep that connectivity and communication flowing.
I'll start with all staff and then you can go on the other. But I mean, all staff is like the big family reunion and I never miss it. And if we're going to keep continuity in multi-site, I can't miss it. And so it even moves dates, like it's on the first Tuesday or the third Thursday, or, it moves around based on my travel schedule because I'm not missing it. And so that helps us reconnect again. COVID was terrible when we couldn't meet together. And remember, we did it online, and then we even did we got everybody together in one room. Remember that? We had that giant separate
We had a
area in the
divider.
middle, like 30 feet in the middle.
Contingency plan.
Yeah, it was a contingency in case they caught it, they didn't get exposed to it. I mean, it was like
It didn't work very well.
But I mean, we all long to be together, and that's a secret of what has happened. That coming together and then going to do your own thing, and then coming together and going to do your own thing. That's been huge. And then I was gonna say, I think Slack has helped.
Yeah, big time.
I was going to say,
big time.
Yeah.
We launched it at the very beginning of
the
COVID.
communication tool Slack. I know some people use Microsoft Teams, but Slack, when we went from off of email to using Slack.
And even text. I mean, we text a lot less. We text relationally, but now Slack is where
I still am stuck in text, and I'm like, I got to check my Slack. Oh, no.
no, listen.
It's like old school.
For the majority of the organization, though, I will say
it's awesome.
Everybody's happy to accommodate your texting.
It's all Slack.
That moving to that, because it was the blend of people wanted to text, but they also wanted email. And I think these instant messaging tools, if you haven't looked at that for your team, if your team is more than 4 or 5 people, but you can have volunteers on it.
Yeah.
I really think that instant
good.
messaging tool this isn't a promotion for Slack, but it's.
Well, we're bummed out. We want them to give us a nonprofit rate, and they won't do it for churches.
No.
I'm like, seriously?
Yeah.
I don't think they like
It's expensive,
churches.
no doubt. And I know our
like
CFO
us.
would say that we should use something else, but truly, I
Smoke
think.
signals.
Yeah.
Cheaper.
Carrier pigeons.
It's a great
It's a
tool.
different way to do it.
And what else has worked?
Yeah, so I think you guys have talked about development, but I'm thinking about the cross-pollination that happens for our staff. Our campus staff, they have a staff meeting every Tuesday, and so there's team building. We try to, I think ideally we'd love to model every week's staff meeting like an all staff, but for your campus staff. So there's leadership development, there's prayer, sometimes there's worship, and then you do some of the agenda items of calendaring coming up for the campus. But every week there's this infusion of good culture. So that's at the campuses. Department meetings would happen centrally as well. But go ahead.
Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I know you've kind of pushed some of our campus pastors to make that shift over the years, and you've led that way. But I see a lot of churches and talk to a lot of pastors that's not at all how they do it. They are very agenda items.
Yeah.
Be here with the second, the time shows up. We're not doing food. We're not doing lunch. This is staff meeting to plan the weekend service.
Yeah.
And we've actually shifted away from that. And I mean, there's some agenda, but really there are other meetings, weekend service planning meetings, other meetings that are focused to that, because all of a sudden you're the kids pastor and you're going, they just spent 45 minutes back and forth about what songs we're going to sing or hear back and forth about the communion moment.
So
And I'm here
true.
as a kids pastor, and I don't even care because we're doing our own thing. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and a callback to the last podcast that we did together about culture. We did talk a little bit about it in saying staff meetings
to get those
should
views
not
up.
be. It's not promotion for me. I'm just saying we did talk about it. It is there, but not.
Listen to the
don't-
crisis video, podcast,
Yeah, it's-
crisis podcast.
Don't plan your weekend services in staff meeting. Like,
Correct.
it's
I
the
agree.
most boring thing of all time, and it's like it just feels like waste time.
I lived it for 6 years, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
6 years as a youth pastor at churches, and you'd sit there, stop, just serve everybody communion. You know?
Yeah. Like we're still doing juice and crackers. Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Like we don't need to figure out all together what songs are we singing, what world are we living in, and like that's you did that 30 years ago maybe, but now it is. I view staff meeting, all staff first and foremost, once a month with Pastor Rob, but then every campus staff meeting that's meeting. This is your culture moment. This is your heart moment. This is your pastoral and prophetic moment. This is your development moment with your team. Let it be the best version of what our church is together as a team. And if it's the worst part of everybody's week, everything flows out of that. So it only gets worse from there. So let that be the best part of your week and put intentional time. I remember we went to something with Craig Rochelle, a roundtable, and he said, I put the most out of anything I do in regards to teaching and sermon writing and planning, I put the most time in to the all staff teaching that I do. And so he sees that as the most important thing I do is not even the weekend message. As important as that is, it's what I'm pouring into the staff, and everything flows from there. So that's a little bit about it. Don't let it be your planning meeting. You can have a pre-service or a pre-weekend production meeting with your team that makes sense, but let it be the most life-giving part of your work week. Does
I
that
don't know
make
if
sense?
you've ever had a staff meeting like that. Like we used to do staff when I was at other churches, and it really was. We'd start out, all right, man, that was terrible. These things went bad at church. Don't let that
This
happen
family was
again,
gone.
and
We don't
this
know.
and
Yeah.
this. Did you see what that usher did? And who picked those songs? And it was just like a vent on all the bad things. You're just like, so you'd start out totally depressed. And then you'd get to like, all right, what are we going to do? Well, this is going to work. Is that going to work? And it was just like a big to-do list. And you left there and you're like, I hate this meeting. I hate everything about it. So, but we're not talking about staff meetings. We're talking about MultiSite, which
Yeah.
is so much more fun.
Yes, but I think they're so key to MultiSite is to having good staff meetings that are the right amount of time and teams allowing them to lead. I think we could talk a lot about this. I know we got to land the plane here eventually, but what would you say for, Kirk, you've been a campus pastor for, many years, leading a campus, but also leading the campus pastors. You've, hired a number of them. What would you say is the primary responsibility of a campus pastor? Where you'd say you're preaching on video. Yes, they're preaching, 6 to 10 times a year. But when you would think about campus pastor, if somebody's starting a campus, having a MultiSite, it's not an executive pastor. It's a different kind of title. What would you say this is what a great campus pastor should look like?
That's a great thing because we started out with, you can be a campus pastor. You're the youth pastor. You don't do anything on Sunday. Why don't you run a campus and be the youth pastor? It didn't work. And so it was kind of like basically the idea started out with just run the service. Just don't mess it up. No, really. That kind of was beginning. And then it was like, no, that's not going to work. It's not don't mess it up. And then it was like, okay, minister to the people. It became like become their personal chaplain. And then it was like, no, that's not going to work. And then it moved into like, okay, lead this campus. And then it was like, okay, that's getting closer. And then it was like, be a great leader that understands what God is doing and do it in this local congregation as part of a bigger team. And it started from like, anybody can do it, like just, sure, you can do it. Put the intern in there. They're a campus pastor. And now it's like, no, you don't understand. There's an art. There's a leadership that comes with it. You're like, no, they've got to be good to be a campus pastor. And so to me, Really, it's increased a ton. And I look
You've
back.
got to be good to be a campus pastor.
You
That was just funny to
do.
me.
Yep.
Because it literally was in the beginning. It was like, throw anybody in there. It's fine. It's multi-site. It works. Put them on the screen. Craig Rochelle does it. We'll all do it. And then you realize, no, you have to be a pastor. You have to be, there's a calling. There's a leadership. There's a growth. People are looking at you like, I love the vision of this church, but will I follow you as my campus pastor? That's like, are you going to take me anywhere? So it changed.
Kirk, what would you add?
I would say I agree with everything that you just said, Pastor Rob. The number one most important thing for me, as I see it, would be that they fully embody the culture of our church, and they're able to communicate in an authentic, natural way what is the vision of our church. And so not just the vision bullseye of 500, but talking through all of our values, that they fully embody the culture and the values. That's the best way to say it. And they're able to, to develop leaders. So they're not just, I'm a great presenter leader, although that matters, is they can actually develop and pour into staff. They're people that replace themselves. So every time they're given a platform, how can they raise up other people to step onto those platforms? That's like, some of that's delegation and empowerment, but doing that in a really natural and not mechanical, robotic way, as well as truly, I think this is like, it can't be understated that they really, really, really love their people. So not like they're as possessive, but there's like, I've been asked to steward these people. Like this is the flock that's been empowered to me by Pastor Rob and by God. I love these people. I love this community. I don't want to be somewhere else. This is not a stepping stone thing. This is not just a ladder climbing thing. This isn't like, I'll do this for 2 years if I can then get to Central to do some Central. Like, it's like, no, you love these people. And if God takes you somewhere else, great. But you got to love the people. And obviously, with one of our campus pastors just going to be with Jesus and losing, you pastored through that moment. I know you guys have a podcast that explained a little bit about that. But you were able to say truthfully, like, hey, I love you as a lead pastor from a distance,
right?
But you had a campus pastor that knew your name and knew your children's names, and that loved you deeply. And I think that is huge for a campus pastor, to truly embody the values and the culture of our church, but to really love the people.
Huge skill set. And I forget what island it is in Paris, but Notre Dame is on this little island. I want to say Saint Louis, but I'm not sure. But it's on an island in Paris, and my thing is, like, the campus pastor is that island, and the lead pastor's on one embankment, and the congregation's on the other embankment, and it's like you have to love the vision and the leader that you're following, and love the people that you're ministering to, and you're going back and forth between the two of them, and you can't be like, forget the lead guy or lady. I love the people only, and you got to be on the vision. So I think an important thing is the campus pastor loves the vision, then wants to follow the leader, and then wants to love the people. And it's that island spot, and you're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So it's a unique calling.
Yeah, it's true.
No, that's. I think that sums it up really well. And I would just make a plug for conference that we'll talk more about this at conference too. We usually have breakout sessions on this.
Barely scratched the surface.
I know. If you're interested, for those listening, we've thought about doing an event called, we do generosity accelerators all over the country. We've been promoting those. We've thought about doing a multi-site accelerator. So if you're interested in that, definitely send us an email, say, hey, I'd be interested, would love to join that. But conference June 6th and 7th, we'll talk about it. I know Chris Hodges will be there. He has a lot to say about multi-site, but we'll most likely have some breakout session or something around there. So want to make sure, if you have more questions, we want to make sure we're answering them. But conference would be a great place to come, and all of our team is going to be there to ask questions or to answer questions, and I'm sure we'll have breakouts where questions can be answered about it. So but we scratched the surface. I'm glad we did it. And, barely. We solved all multi-site problems, but thanks for talking this through, and I know there'll be more to come. So
our privilege.
Our privilege.
Great.